Welcome back, my fellow patriots, to the Save Our Republic Daily video series. We are moving on now to the 14th Amendment, which was passed by Congress on June 13th of 1866 and ratified on July 9th of 1868. This was obviously following the Civil War as part of the Reconstruction process pushed forward through by the radical Republicans in Congress. Lincoln had been assassinated. The radical Republican Congress decided they were going to make sure that the Civil War was not for naught and that they would secure and guarantee the rights of African Americans who were formerly slaves and other persons within the United States. This is a fundamentally important document and constitutional provision for many reasons. Section 1 of it provides that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state where they reside. This is really important. What this meant is that former enslaved persons were now citizens, and that anyone born in the United States and subject to its jurisdiction was a citizen. So natural birth citizenship. And it also says people that are naturalized, so people that immigrate and go through the naturalization process. So we're all citizens of both of the United States and of the state in which we reside. It also provides that no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. So this protects certain, what we would normally call rights, privileges, and immunities of the United States for everyone, regardless of what state you might live in. This has pretty much been eviscerated by the Supreme Court in connection with a case called the Slaughterhouse cases and some other further jurisprudence that really limits what is considered to be a privilege or immunity of a citizen of the United States. But it is important because it provides that in the narrow area of privileges and immunities of the United States, that no individual state can violate those privileges or immunities. It also provides that nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So before, when we talked about the Bill of Rights, there was a specific constitutional provision that provided that there would be no deprivation of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, but that was referring to the federal government. So this now provides that no state may deprive an individual of any life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And this is really important because what it does is, especially for the southern states, which were trying to re-invoke the badges of slavery, creating a Jim Crow system in which African Americans were disadvantaged, that this amendment is intended to protect those rights for those people. And this has also been used in subsequent Supreme Court decisions to increase what is considered to be not just due process rights, which are things like notice and hearing an impartial decision maker, and that you have to follow the formalities of criminal justice, but also substantive rights like abortion, the right to privacy. And we may talk about those in future episodes, but right now just remember that's how those things have come to life. And it continues, nor deny to any person, so no state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. And this obviously is extremely important because, again, it applies to the states. It requires that everyone, regardless of their race or really any other immutable characteristic, they can't be treated differently because of that. There should be no discrimination. And that is help fulfilling the founding first principle of equality. Likewise, the due process provision, protecting due process for all individuals, that's protecting life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Those unalienable rights. And so this is really fundamentally important to protecting our unalienable rights for all citizens across the country. There's some other provisions dealing with post-Civil War matters and ensuring that those that had engaged in insurrection against the country could not obtain political office, and that African Americans should not be excluded in connection with voting and how that works. And if they did, that there would be a decrease in the population, there'd be a decrease in the number of representatives in Congress. So those are very important. It also said that the United States would not assume the debts of the Confederacy. That was out of question, that the federal government would insure its own debts, but not those of the Confederacy. And then it provided another section, the final section, Section 5, which says that Congress shall have the power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. So like Amendment 13, which had a very similar provision, this empowered the Congress to be able to enforce the 14th Amendment, which has been fundamentally important to ensuring liberty and equality across the country. So think about the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act, and also there were civil rights acts in the wake of and during the wake of the Civil War and during Reconstruction, and this provision was intended to ensure that those acts would be constitutional. So it really expanded the role of protection of the Constitution to encompass not just protections against the federal government, but against state governments, and brought to life more vigorously and robustly the founding first principles of the rule of law, unalienable rights, limited government, the social compact, equality. That's the keystone of this amendment, and it is a watershed moment in America because it was intended to help all Americans move closer to those ideals expressed in the first principles. Until next time, don't forget about America's Survival Guide at americasurvivalguide.com, Patriot Week at patriotweek.org, the Patriot Lessons American History and Civics podcast, as well as the TV show, both of which can be found on patriotweek.org. The podcast can be found on Apple and Google Play and all those kinds of things. And if you like this, please like it, subscribe, and share. God bless you, and God bless America.